All right, everybody. So in this Approaching the Scene, we got a really, really special honor. We're here in Beidler Forest, just outside Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm joined with two good friends and frequent workshop co-conspirators. I got DC Offutt from West Virginia and David Archer, who's a native to Charleston here in South Carolina and has been co-leading this workshop. We've had a ton of great weather. We've been out photographing birds. We were at the Center for Birds of Prey. We've been in old downtown Charleston. We've eaten good food. We've drank some good beer, eaten some good pizza, had all kinds of great food, and lots of nice weather. We've got a kind of a cloudy, rainy day here in Beidler Forest, which is an amazing, natural, old growth cypress swamp that the Audubon Society maintains. And I want to talk a little bit today about the fact that we've had DC with his Sony A9, and David's got his Nikon D5. And so we're kind of looking at what are the two top gun, high speed, badass autofocus cameras. And we've been photographing birds in flight. And we've been doing it at the same time. And all three of us have shot both cameras. Now DC's native to the Sony system. How long have you been shooting Sony?
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And David's been shooting Nikon probably nearly as long as I have. Yeah. And you don't lack too many Nikon toys.
Not too many.
Although he hasn't picked up any of the Z cameras like I have, but he may after.
I'm a holdout.
He's a holdout. So it was interesting pitting the kind of pinnacle of optical autofocus against the pinnacle of mirrorless autofocus. And I gotta say, I'm gonna show some images and some sequences. DC shot this spectacled owl. He's the native Sony shooter. At 20 frames a second with the brand new autofocus that you picked up just before coming on the workshop, the new
new
firmware, the new
yeah.
firmware update for it. David's how many frames a second?
12.
12. So it's a deficit already, but neither camera seems to miss very many shots. And I was photographing with my D500, which has the same autofocus system as this, but a slower frame rate, 10 frames a second, which I used to think was just amazing. And I got to say, this whole time, we've been working out there, you're like framing something up, and then you hear DC just go. It's like a little fan. And I got to say, I have been skeptical of whether the mirrorless could keep up with the best of optical. But David, what are your thoughts, having shot both of them?
I don't know. The mirrorless is much better than I anticipated. At least the Sony.
Yeah. No, and I've been shooting the Nikon quite a bit, the Z6 and the Z7. Neither one can compete with either of these cameras. That's why, I'm traveling to Cuba. It's a wonderful travel camera, wonderful street shooting camera, landscapes, low light, all that stuff. It's just, I love it. I love the viewfinder, but it isn't up yet with the Sonys by any stretch. It's a bit behind for tracking. And from the A9's perspective, I think, personally, I have no problem getting every frame, most every frame sharp with either system. The interesting thing is that stepping into the Sony with, I picked it up, let DC let me use this beast a little bit. It was dead simple. Tracking is dead simple. And I would say that if you're not someone who's spent a lot of time learning to do perfect autofocus with the optical system, you're going to step in and get every frame sharp and in focus easier with this new mirrorless system than you would with the Nikon. And I got to say, the thing, I was skeptical. I know I've been saying, well, they shoot golf championships because they're quiet, but no, I'm hopeful. I believe Nikon will catch up and that the mirrorless cameras will get the same kind of autofocus system. I think mirrorless is definitely the way of the future. But I don't know. What do you think? Talk a little bit about your thoughts about, have you used autofocus with the optical system for fast tracking and motion and wildlife much, DC?
Well, in the older Sony version, but this is far superior.
Yeah.
It's electronic shutter. It's absolutely silent. You have to make it make a sound just to know you're taking a picture. And it's not much of a sound, but it's much better.
And it didn't feel like there was any kind of limit to the buffer of the thing.
Never buffered out. Yeah.
And I know, David, you stepped up and you fired off a burst or two with it, and you're like, wow. So.
Yeah, I didn't think mirrorless was ready for prime time with birds in action, but
But it doesn't have that
After trying
feel
this-
that you like. Describe you often say. I asked David when I was coming here. I said, I want to borrow your D500, and he said, well, I still have the D5 if you want a man's camera. I've actually never
Can
had.
we still say that?
Yeah, well, or a real woman's camera either.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that too.
I think women tend to be smarter sometimes about having things that don't weigh down
Yeah.
quite as much. Even though they have the purse and we don't, we tend to carry bigger, stupider things that we don't have any place to put. But that's a great camera. It's magnificent. It's
And
incredible.
It feels good in my hand.
It does.
Even though it's a big camera.
Yeah.
I don't have the biggest hands, but it feels good.
I've always been a person where I'm backpacking in and I'm carrying stuff light, and I haven't bought that camera specifically for that reason. I was excited when the D500 came. Now, just to say, I'm not jumping to Sony because I do love the Nikons, and my D500 does a great job. I've got some wonderful shots on this trip with the optical system, and it fires 10 frames a second. So I think if you're in that Nikon world and you want to dabble in the mirrorless, don't ditch your old DSLR if you like action and sports. I think you'll have a real frustrating time with the Z6 or the Z7. We'll see what the firmware update in May brings. Maybe it'll really improve. I'll test it out and let you know. But for right now, I think a really nice combo for you Nikon shooters is either the Z6 and the D850 or the Z7 and the D500. That way you've got an action sports camera and you got a really nice lightweight, beautiful mirrorless optical viewfinder camera. And for those of you with the Sonys, if you want to shoot birds, wildlife, sports, and action, I know the A9 isn't cheap, but man, is that a sweet machine.
Yeah. And the AR7 III for everything else.
Yeah, the A7R III is a fantastic camera. I wish the A7 III had that same viewfinder that the A9 and the A7R III has.
Yeah.
I think that's the one bummer about that. So hey guys, thanks so much, and thanks so much for sharing the cameras around and letting us really kind of do this test. I was really curious I don't own either of the Top Gun sports and action cameras. I'm more of a kind of general travel, going light kind of guy, and it's fun to play with them. So
You're welcome.
and it's been a blast of a workshop.
Yeah.
It has.
It has.
It's been great.
It's been really
It has.
fun. All right, so that's it for this one.